It's time again for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.
Hi, I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
We're the Insiders. So, Scott, we've got the 7th Congressional District, which is very different than it used to be. And we've got an interesting thing. There's a Democratic and Republican primary. But one of the really interesting things is what's going on with the E-lines fighting each other, so each of them with $1 million into their favorite Republican candidate. So tell us, who are the candidates, what are they doing, and why are these E-lines fighting each other?
Well, I think you're right with the fact that the 7th District has changed. There was a time when that district, Obie held it for 32 years or whatever it was, maybe 40 years. And it was, after that, a swing district for a while. And now it is the most Republican district in Wisconsin. And I think everybody knows that the primary there is going to decide who the next congressman or woman will be from that district. So everyone's focused on that primary, and people are trying to pick their favorite candidate and push them across the line. And it's interesting to see where people are landing in all of it, right? I mean, you have Michael Alfonso, who is the son-in-law of Sean Duffy. Duffy is doing everything he can to raise money and to raise his son-in-law's profile. He even went out and got the president to endorse him. You would think that would be enough to decide that race. And yet, we have two other really strong candidates in this seat, one of whom, Liz Eline, is supporting, in Jesse Eben, and while her husband, Dick Eline, is supporting Alfonso. But then there's a third candidate in the race who probably is the person who was, prior to all this, the one best known in the district for his many years of working in the local Republican Party, for his having been in the Iranian hostage crisis 47 years ago. I realize that the number of people who remember that is fading away each year. But there are 3 strong candidates in this race, and I think they're still sorting things out, right? I mean, it is very helpful to Jesse Eben to have Liz Eline having given to a favorable PAC that is supporting Jesse Eben. That makes her a player in this race, no doubt about it. $1 million up north in those districts in a primary, that's a lot of money. In meantime, Alfonso has raised probably a couple million at this point. So he's going to be able to get his message out there. The question is, will Kevin Hermaning, the local businessman with the grassroots connections, will he be able to compete with the two of them? I don't know. It's going to be, you know how this works with 3-way races, where, if one starts a fight with another one, then a third candidate tends to benefit. We've seen that before. If 2 people start shooting at each other, the third candidate rises. Will that happen in this race, or will they all just play nice and sell themselves? Or are they going to be throwing elbows throughout the whole way? So I don't know, but whoever wins that primary is going to be the next congressional representative from northern Wisconsin.
Well, that was a lot of talk about the primary. I think that clearly it's going to be the traditional story for Republicans. You can't win a primary without Donald Trump. So Alonso will win the primary, but you can't win the general with him. Now, in this case, although I believe it's going to be a blue tsunami, I do not believe that Democrats are going to take that seat. But this is the scenario where you could possibly do it if it was a somewhat more competitive seat, but it's not going to happen. But I'll tell you what, there are 2 really brave souls that I want to give a shout out to: Ginger Murray and Fred Clark, 2 Democrats who are running for this seat. By the way, if you want to look at the old history here, Dave Obie, who had that seat for about 40 years, I think. Ginger, I think, ran for an assembly seat and was encouraged to do so by Democrats to help Roger Bresky and she's a great Democrat. Fred Clark actually served in the assembly. So we've got a couple of really wonderful people running on the Democratic side. But I have to say, got to be honest, don't think that that's going to do anything in the general. But the real story here, the real story that Scott mentioned but passed over, is Eline versus Eline. Millions of dollars, each of them with $1 million in there in the primary. That's not helping Republicans. That's helping a particular candidate. And by the way, I understand the person who doesn't want to say, look, just because you're Duffy's son-in-law doesn't mean you get to run away with this thing. But I think that Trump endorsement, is going to be the thing that's going to carry the day here. But I'll tell you what, let me give you another thought. One thing, if for some reason Ginger Murray or Fred Clark is able to pull off an upset in this thing, oh my God, then this tsunami is just of unbelievable proportions, because I think this seat is the one seat that I would never predict would go Democratic. And isn't that something that for 40 years, Dave Obey held the seat? Oh, and by the way, let's be honest, even the seat that Dave Obey had was more Democratic. For example, Stevens Point, et cetera, has been taken out of the seat. But it will be an interesting thing to watch, and I will be interested to see the statements from the Elines after the election is over.
I think I find this fascinating, and people all over the country talk to me about this, that the Elines will go into a race and Dick will be supporting one candidate and Liz will be supporting another candidate. And people go, that's crazy. And I'm thinking, well, wait, it's not the 1950s. These are two highly successful people who are both among the state's top business leaders. They're smart. They just don't always come to the same answer on politics. Who says that a husband and wife have to vote the same way, that they have to contribute to the same people? It's just that you and our spouses might give $100, not $1 million. It's the $1 million, I think, that makes people think, oh my gosh, but that's just because they've been so wildly successful. They can play at a different level. But I believe it is the 21st century, and husbands and wives can differ about politics and still have a wonderful marriage. So, and apparently a great business partnership.
My takeaway from it is that rich people dominate politics now, and it's an unfortunate thing for our process. And that's a lot of the reasons why it's a story. If one of these folks get in and put $1 million in a race, that makes the person viable. Doesn't matter what their thing is. And by the way, Kevin Hermaning, I think at one point, who is not getting money from either one, and notice how he dropped off the face of our discussion here. That's a guy who I think at one point ran against Dave Obey when he was just not long back from having been a hostage, and that did not work. But that was people wondered whether that would be a successful mode, and he's been interested in politics for a long time. But it's not going to be how much where you were a hostage for the country or whatever. It's going to come down to the money. And I think we all recognize, if you're really an insider, realize that yes, your personal story is important. But to be honest with you, money, when you're facing $1 million versus $50,000, there's no way to overcome that difference. You can overcome maybe being outspent 2 to 1, as we sometimes did in my good old days. But generally, that's not going to happen. And I think that that's part of the larger story that people may or may not want to take a look at. This is something that highlights it as to what does that mean for our politics going forward. And I don't think generally it's anything good.
It is not unusual, though. You will admit that it is not unusual for the top spender in a race to lose. That happens all the time. It does. There's more that's required than money to win. You do have to have a message, and you do have to have a connection with the voters. And each of these candidates has pieces of that. So it'll be fascinating to see what the voters decide in August of this year.
We'll see you next time, folks.
You've been listening to The Insider with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.